Welcome back to the Alphabet Zoo podcast. This is a very special episode we're having today because this episode will be collaborating with Project KaSaMa as we talk about coping during quarantine in a non-LGBTQ affirming household with our very special guest.
Beatrice Torre.
So, Burns, would you like to introduce her?
All right, so our special guest speaker for today is Beatrice Torre, a UP professor and coordinator of the LGBT Psychology Special Interest Group at the Psychological Association of the Philippines.
We're so honored to have you here po talaga, Miss Bea. Oh my God.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm happy to share whatever I can, especially on this very relevant topic. Thank you for
Oh
inviting
my God. We're really like we're really honored to have you po talaga, like oh my God.
Because it's a really relevant topic, especially nowadays when usually the main problem of people in the LGBTQ community are
Mhm.
their family, actually, because a lot of
Yeah.
families in the Philippines are really conservative and traditional, so it's hard to stay with them during quarantine. And that is
Mhm.
why we have topics that we need to talk about today so that our
Yeah.
listeners can
Mhm.
understand and learn from everything we'll discuss.
Mhm.
All
Wait,
right, cool.
like just a little pretext because like we've noticed din naman Bernice, 'di ba? Like with the guests that we've had, like a lot of our guests, like a lot of the stories that we've tackled in our previous podcasts in our previous episodes, like a lot of people are coming out during quarantine. And like I saw TikTok then that had a really like had like a really good insight as to why that is. And like sinabi doon na parang kaya daw may mga ganun na kaya daw maraming nagko-come out during quarantine is because we're in our own homes and like we're like kasi sa mga bahay natin we feel safe from like outside judgment kasi nga we're in a, like our own little bubble, and yung usual na social norms that we have to fit into, we're not really confined by that so much compared to when we're outside quarantine. Kaya there's like a lot of people who are coming to terms with themselves like faster than normal. Kaya like kasi
Mm,
nga they're not inhibited by you know like outside eyes. Like there's less judgment comparatively to yun nga to the out kapag nandun ka sa labas. Lang like nakita ko lang yung ano na yun, yung TikTok. Like that was like a really insightful TikTok. I was like napaisip talaga na, ano ba't nga ba ganun? So yeah, like we're gonna be talking about things along those lines kasi like
mm-mm.
especially nga na like an non-LGBTQ affirming household and coming out in that setting, it can really be something that's very troublesome and very
Because, like you
murky
said,
waters.
families are supposed to be more comfortable than the outside world. But the problem
Mm-hmm.
is, sometimes or most of the time, families are the ones
Mm-hmm.
judging instead of the people outside, especially when it comes to the LGBTQ community. So, yeah, cool. The first topic.
Okay. Okay, so one of the very first topics that we're gonna be tackling with Miss Bea today is that yung like yun nga, like going into like closeted members of the community living and being quarantined with like quote unquote conservatives, very traditional families that are, that is very conforming to, the very heteronormative like notions of being a citizen of the Philippines. Wow. But yeah, yun nga po. Like we have several questions now we would like to discuss with you, Miss Bea. And like,
or
the very first one listed is like, is environment or like household or school a probable cause of the deterioration of mental health of a member of the LGBTQ community? Like, yun nga po,
that's
like,
a question. And definitely, oo, yung social environment natin. can really affect our mental health, especially for LGBTQ youth. Kasi nga, to begin with, for many LGBTQ youth, aware sila growing up na not everyone around them accepts them, whether it's in subtle ways na express na yung mga side jokes, o kaya in more more blatant ways, sometimes na-express yung bullying, sometimes even harassment or violence. So parang in many ways, LGBTQ youth already feel unwelcome or not completely accepted. And yung kapag nararamdaman nila yun from the environment that they most often move around in, so yung kanilang home, with their families, or in school, where they spend time with their peers, talagang pwede siyang maka-affect sa mental health. Kasi for all of us naman, whether you're LGBTQ or not, everyone has the basic need to feel accepted, and to feel like you belong. So, when that need is not met, at kapag when you know na, yung reason kung bakit hindi nila ako ina-accept fully, or yung reason kung bakit hindi ako nagbe-belong dito, is because of something about me, something about my identity, it can really affect your mental health negatively. It can make you want to hide or change that part of who you are. Kaya nga maraming hindi confident na mag-come out, o kaya very selective lang who they come out to. It can make you parang withdraw, unfortunately, from your social world, di ba? So parang if you feel like, hindi naman nila ako maiintindihan, you might kind of disengage, which is not good for your mental health. Kasi yung social connections natin help to boost our mental health. Ayun. So definitely, yes, yung environment natin, especially our families and our school environment, can definitely play a role.
With regards to what you said po, especially if families are not really affirming to the LGBTQ community, children, let's say the children, what would you recommend to the children? Like, for example, usually their support are their friends, but what would you recommend to them now? Because online it's really hard to talk to their friends and seek support from people, on the internet. So what would you advise them?
Siguro yung totoo naman, it's very true that there are limitations in what online interactions can offer. Pero because that's one of the few ways that we can continue to communicate now, I would encourage people to make the most of it, especially if, so kunyari, isa kang LGBTQ youth, and you feel kind of isolated, you don't feel accepted in your own household. If you already have friends outside, like people you know from school, that you're already connected to, people you trust, pwede ring adults that you trust, like a teacher that you know would be accepting towards you, guidance counselor. Kung meron ka ng existing na ganun na network, kahit online could be a helpful means, because kahit na may limitations yung online communication, at least that you feel that there is someone that you can talk to, someone that you can be open with, and that you feel confident will not judge you, will allow you to explore, for example, your identity, or even simple things like, kasi for heterosexual people, diba, we take for granted so many things. We take for granted that we can talk about our crushes, diba, na hindi tayo,
that's true.
Friends, or we take for granted na parang most of the time we can ask people, we can tell people, this is my nickname, this is what I want you to call me, and parang wala siyang, parang people will accept that. But if an LGBTQ youth wants to talk about their crush, or wants to ask people to call them by a different name na mas nagmamatch sa gender identity nila, they might feel na, uy, hindi ako sure kung welcome ba yun, or kung if I will be met with mockery, iti-tease ba nila ako, alienate ba nila ako. So, if there are already people in your network that you can easily get in touch with online, who you feel would provide you with acceptance, kahit na limited, kahit na hindi naman all the time pwede kayong mag-usap. Try to find ways to carve out that time and to continue to build that connection, kasi parang important right now for us to rely on whatever support that we can get. Yun. So yun yung isang masasabi ko. Another would be that we can also to some extent rely on kahit nga hindi it doesn't have to be like talking to people, but even exploring, kasi the good thing about yung current time is na medyo dumadami yung positive representations of LGBTQ people,
that's true.
including LGBTQ Filipinos. It's still not perfect, I know, it's still not perfect talaga. Pero at least ngayon, like meron ng mga on YouTube, merong mga voice love series, simple things like that. On Netflix, for example, if you have access to Netflix, dumadami yung movies and series that have positive representations of LGBTQ, including LGBTQ youth and relationships and friendships. So, kahit yun, if you are able to take the time to parang explore those representations, kasi it's also good for us, for LGBTQ youth, to see positive representations of what it can mean to be LGBT. Na hindi naman laging ibig sabihin na because you're LGBT, you will be doomed na maging malungkot yung life mo, you have to hide who you are, ganon. So it helps when you are able to see kahit fictional na representations of happy, of successful, healthy LGBTQ people. Malaking bagay din sa yun. And of course, kung meron talagang mental health issues na hindi, yung parang, of course, there are times when we need support, when we need parang support beyond what our friends or even family members can give us. So, option din naman to reach out to professional mental health care support providers. Pwedeng, so merong mga nag-o-offer ng teletherapy, online counseling, online sessions. Meron ding mga nag-o-offer ng options like, kasi syempre not everyone can go online for counseling, di ba? And especially if you are, yun na nga, you're in a household na hindi accepting, tapos paano kung wala ka naman masyadong private space? Yun yung isang problem madalas eh. So, you want to undergo counseling or you want to talk to someone, pero kung if you do like a Zoom call, people will hear kung ano yung pinag-uusapan nyo, ayaw mo nga. So, meron namang mga nag-o-offer ng alternatives like pwede through chat, through text, na hindi kailangang maririnig ng ibang tao yung pinag-uusapan ninyo. So, of course, these are not perfect, but again, parang it's still better to make use of whatever support is available. Kasi kahit hindi niya perfectly ma-address yung issues, at least man lang meron kang makuhang some form of support. It can still help.
Yeah.
That's
Like,
so true.
Yeah, like actually, like going back to the like the consuming media thing. That's actually one of like my favorite things to do. Like, like actually, like I think I said this in the podcast previously. Like, isa na sa mga prerequisites ko for watching like movies, TV shows, or like anything, there needs to be at least like one LGBTQ character that's properly represented for me to actually like watch it. That's why like I really love like content like Pose FX. I really love Pose. So I'm gonna say it again. Like, kasi it's like proper LGBTQ, proper LGBTQ representation. It really tells, like, that narrative of how powerful and how beautiful and how colorful, our community is. And I really want to highlight that kind of content na I think, people should really consume, like, especially, like, people within the community, because, people within the community, they aren't, like, especially, yun nga, closeted people who aren't, as exposed to the community as, as people who are out would be. Like, consuming content like that gives them, like, a peek into what it is like being, part of that community. And then once they see that, maybe they'll understand that they're not alone and they don't have to, live in hiding, kumbaga. Kasi it's one of those things that really helps you into, accepting who you are, and accepting that who you are is fine and it's valid, and it's, yeah, all those things. But yeah, like, again, it's not perfect nga. So, like, even with all of that, like, a support system, like, consuming, like, proper media representation and seeking out professional help, there's there's still a toll, like, on you. Kaya, like, and yun nga, going back to the like, the mental health thing, like, like, that's, like, we talked about earlier, like, an environment in general, like school, home, whatever, like, anywhere, like. But can we how can we imagine that, like, magnified, especially, like, ngayon nga po na we're in the quarantine, na people who are in their homes, like, quarantine, like, is that, like, that pressure, like, magnified, or is it, like, siguro medyo less kasi they're exposed to less people,
Mm.
like.
That's a great question kasi parang kumbaga my answer to that is really it depends. It depends on what your household is like, and what your usual parang pre-pandemic, what your usual environment is like. Kasi madalas na rin namin, ito medyo anecdotal, pero based sa mga yun nga, narratives, mga sinishare na experiences ng mga LGBTQ youth and even adults na kakilala ko kapag nagkakaroon kami ng ganitong discussion. For some, and I think yung unfortunately medyo majority na experience is na hindi nakatulong yung quarantine. And one reason is like what you've mentioned before, medyo mas common pa rin talaga, especially here in the Philippines, na hindi completely accepting yung immediate families, which most people live with, and especially for youth, diba? So, before, pre-pandemic kasi, ganun na rin naman, pero at least nung hindi pa tayo naka-quarantine, we didn't have to stay at home. At least during those times, for some people, the times when they would go out, like go to school, be with their friends, spend time with teachers or orgs, or orgmates, or pursue their hobbies. Minsan kasi, yun yung times na nakakahanap ka ng spaces na, uy, safe ako dito. It doesn't even have to be an LGBT org, although of course, LGBT focused
Yeah.
organizations are good, are helpful, but sometimes people find that space when, halimbawa, you join an organization na parang related to playing a particular sport. And there you meet people who are more accepting of who you are. Or yun, sa experience ng ibang tao, they join a choir, they explore parang their interests, and sometimes that's where you meet, parang kaya nga may term na yung meron tayong families of choice, na they're not the families that we are born into, pero ito yung families na na-form natin unti-unti as we go out into the world and we meet people na who are like us or who at least accept us for who we are. So parang dati nung hindi naka-quarantine, merong ganoong possibility. And Now, unfortunately, for people for whom yun yung way nila para makahanap ng safe space, parang nababawasan yung opportunity na yon. So, kaya pwedeng negative yung naging effect on their mental health. But I also want to acknowledge what you meant, yung other possibility which you mentioned, which some people have also talked about, some LGBT people have also talked about, na minsan kasi yung pinaka-intense na harassment or rejection na na-accept ng iba is outside the home. Yung simpleng bagay, di ba, na when you go out, you walk down the street, you're commuting, kung ano-anong sasabihin sa'yo, people will say things to you, will call you names, or you go to, you have to attend PE class, and people will call you, di ba, yung people will make fun of you for the way you move or the way you look.
Yeah.
But ganoon, di ba, for LGBT people, pwedeng maging source yung outside world ng ganoong parang big and small na expressions ng stigma. So, interestingly, yung experience ng ibang LGBTQ people has been na nung nag-quarantine at parang there's really no reason for them to go out, if their families or the people in their household are more or less accepting, parang at least in their household, they feel a little more safe to start exploring their gender identity, to start expressing who they are without feeling na parang, ano na naman kayo sabihin ng mga tao sa akin. So parang I think yung isang big if talaga doon is yung environment in the household, yung acceptance family. And sometimes, I also want to say na, again, kahit hindi, of course, maganda sana if everyone in the household is accepting. But for some, yung reality nila is na hindi. But even if there's one or a few family members, diba, yung a sibling who is supportive and accepting, or sometimes people find na usually but not always, mas common na yung mga mothers tend to be more accepting or tend to kind of come around more quickly, more easily when their LGBTQ kids come out compared to fathers. So, hindi naman, not to generalize. So, minsan hindi ganon. Pero pinaka-frequent na yung moms yung mas mabilis na maging accepting. So, even if imperfect, hindi yung buong family ay accepting. Pero kahit kung merong family members who are accepting, it can already be a great source of support and comfort for LGBTQ youth, especially at this time. So, siguro reminder na rin yan if there are any viewers who maybe have siblings, cousins, diba, family members na maybe you're not sure if they're LGBT, but you think they might be. Diba? You never know, diba? It's kind of nice to like find little ways to show that hindi mo naman kailangan sabihin explicitly, but find little ways to let them know na, you know, if they ever want to share anything, if they want to come out, or if they want to talk about something, na you would be a safe person to talk to. Kaya nga, people respond to, di ba, simple things like if you share a Facebook post about supporting LGBT rights or LGBT people, or if you change, di ba, yung sometimes you can change your profile picture on social media.
Frames.
Yeah.
Right, merong rainbow something. Yung little things like that, it helps to signal to people na, uy, eto, kung kakausapin ko siya, mukhang, parang, pwede ko siyang maging ally, pwede siyang maging confident. So, there are small things we can do to let the people around us know na we can offer that kind of support.
Opo, actually, we have a DP frame nga for our campaign, and it promotes it promotes LGBTQ.
Yeah, oh
And
my god.
I'm actually not a part of the community, but I'm like an ally naman. So I also
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm,
And
yeah.
about
Like
the yeah.
wait lang. Going back lang to like to the looking for people, who can sympathize with you within your
Mm,
family. Like in my personal experience then, like feel like though I don't lagi ko naisip na all you need is like one person on your team. And thankfully naman, like in my family, there was at least that one person on my team, which is like I have a cousin of mine who was also part of the community. I won't say his or her name na rin. Para like, privacy concerns. But yeah, oh my god, just in case you're listening to this, yeah, oh my god, I'm really thankful na, you were really with me throughout the ride, because like she was yeah, he or she is like my closest family member na. Like even closer than my sisters and my parents. Like they're a cousin kasi. That's why like they really helped me through, like my processing, like me being, somebody who's not really considered like normal, like somebody who's considered different like in our family. Because if you would hear like the talks, like how my parents talk, or how the adults in my family talk about people from within the community, like once I had this another cousin from from like a distant cousin from my father's side that ended up being like that came out as trans, like she was trans. And then all they could talk about was like all they could joke about actually was like, oh, like to me, like, oh, kung ikaw na lang nag-iisang lalaki sa sa'yo na lang nakasalalay sa yung linya ng sapyok, parang ganun. So, like it always kind of like it was hard to like try and smile through that when I wasn't out yet like that. And like, yeah, it like having somebody nga, like on your team just like really helps you, like thinking na, okay, like even if there's people like in my family who thinks this way, at least there's this one person who I know will never do those kinds of things. And I can rely on them, I can lean on them for that support that I need. And it's really comforting. Yeah, yun lang.
mm,
Share ko lang
yeah.
din.
So to our listeners, if you don't have anyone for support, you don't have to worry about making a big group for support, because one is already enough. From this discussion, one is already enough. And if you already have a support group, make sure to thank them and cherish them, because also being a support for someone can take a lot of time and effort, and that's something to thank them for. Yeah. And
Yeah.
um during these times, many are anxious as well as feeling unaccepted, even if there are also these good things as support. And other times when our support group or friend isn't available, there are other times that our only escape or place to go when we don't have a support is social media, like going on dating apps, Twitter, to find new people. But this can also be a short-term solution, and it can be detrimental to ourselves. So what's your take on this, Miss Bea?
Um, so that's a very tricky question, no? Because I don't want to make a blanket statement about about using online platforms, about using social media or even dating apps to find yung ganitong connections. Kasi hindi naman natin masasabi na it will always have a negative effect. For many people, online environments like, for example, Twitter, can be very welcoming spaces, especially because, uh, I mean, comparing lang across different social media apps, ha. So I feel like for some people, Twitter is a bit friendly in the sense na pwede kang mag-maintain ng certain level of anonymity, it's less likely that your parents or your older relatives will be on Twitter compared to Facebook. So parang
That's
for
true.
people who are not completely out, di ba, pag sa Facebook kasi parang kailangan mo laging isipin kung, baka matag ako sa kung ano, baka,
Yeah.
parang you have to police what you post and what you do online. And for some people, Twitter feels like kind of a safer space.
Yeah.
There's a bit
Yeah,
more,
yeah, like I've always said nga po na like Twitter has always been like my refuge, kumbaga.
and you will see a lot of queer people kasi on Twitter. So parang
Mhm.
you find people or parang Twitter accounts that they can follow na pwedeng maging source ng more information, more support. So even if you're not directly parang conversing, parang kahit hindi mo kakilala, but just having those parang yun nga, people from whom you can see na eh, pwede naman palang maging ganito yung outcomes ko, or meron palang ganitong tao na vocal at who promotes LGBT rights and speaks out about LGBT mental health. So ano ba yun? So yeah, parang it doesn't have to be a bad thing yung turning to social media. Siguro yung challenge lang is of course especially because we're talking about young people, we do know that online spaces can be unfortunately predatory also for young people. It's tough
Yeah.
because it's
Mhm.
really horrible. But there are people who will take advantage of parang ganun because young people are vulnerable sometimes, especially parang young people with mental health issues or other issues like kunyari ano ba, financial issues. Parang kumbaga a lot of young people who spend a lot of time online are seeking some form of validation, maybe, or some form of support that they're not getting from their families. And unfortunately, there are adults who who are predatory and who are there and waiting for someone that they can parang um ano ba, parang take advantage of.
Yeah.
So, parang siguro important lang to be aware of that. I wouldn't say na you should go offline para hindi ka maging victim nitong mga to. I think as long as we take precautions and we're aware of yung mga ganitong, parang may mga modus or may mga ganong galawan.
Opo.
Especially if people try to ask for like very private or very personal information and or things like photos, ganon, videos, parang, ayun, baka medyo red flag, di ba? Masukat mo na.
Mm-mm.
Other than that, siguro it is also true that some research has shown that there's a correlation between um, social media use and symptoms of depression and anxiety. Kaya may mga tao na naniniwala na nako, yung social media use, yun yung nagko-cause ng negative mental health. But of course, we have to keep in mind na yung correlation naman is not the same as causation. So
Mhm.
it might have to do with how they're using social media and not simply the fact that they're using social media. So yung one of the things kasi that can make social media use or ayan, yung use ng dating apps, yung use ng social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, one of the things na posibleng maging link niya to negative mental health, whether you're LGBTQ or not actually, is na sometimes it can bombard you with images of other people's lives which look so ideal,
Oh,
other people's
yes.
bodies and faces which look so perfect, diba? Yung parang,
Mm-mm.
ay,
Yeah.
ba yung ano, ako na lang ba yung hindi perfect? Parang gano'n, minsan yung mafe-feel natin. Why, how come everyone is out there um, spending the quarantine getting ano ba, getting quarantined or, di ba, para
Yes.
everyone on social media is perfecting their baking and cooking skills, pero parang ako, wala akong natutunan. So sometimes parang social media can exaggerate yung we already have a tendency to compare ourselves to others. So the downside of social media and one of the ways that it can expose us or parang make us vulnerable to negative mental health is na it can lead us to compare ourselves negatively to other people. Kasi hindi nakakalimutan natin na syempre, yung pinipresent ng mga tao na selves nila online ay idealized or yung pinaka-positive na sides ng sarili nila. Hindi naman nila pinupost yung moment na, di ba, na nag-binge lang sila. Yung parang nag-binge sila ng marathon, ng series all day, wala silang ibang ginawa. Or, we don't post yung the less than perfect sides of ourselves so often. So, parang nag-create ka ng illusion na everyone else is leading such a dream. So, maybe we should try to explore, no? Parang posting or sharing more, holistic as parang maybe we can social
Realistic.
media where, realistic.
Yeah.
That's good. Parang we can present more realistic versions of ourselves. Okay. With regards naman dun sa dating apps, I think it's somewhat different, of course, because people use dating apps for specific reasons. So usually to meet someone, whether it's for a hookup or parang, something casual or just to talk, just to have someone to chat with. Maybe they're looking for something more serious. And sa current na situation, it's becoming pretty common for people to turn to dating apps. Kahit yun lang, for the purpose of finding someone to talk to. Kasi they find na hindi nila makausap masyado yung mga kasama nila sa bahay. And again, parang hindi ko naman masasabi na it's downright negative. But maybe for those who are using those platforms, siguro important din to manage our expectations. Kasi parang I remember yung isang, nitong quarantine kasi, I've been volunteering for one of the organizations that provides free mental health support, so through calls or online. So I remember one of the clients that I was talking to for a while, kinikwento niya sa akin na, yun nga, she was using dating apps. Sabi niya, honestly, wala naman akong plan to date, to go out with the people I meet kasi nga quarantine, I wouldn't feel safe. But I just want to meet someone I can chat with. So sabi niya, pero bakit ganon? Parang I'll meet someone, chat kami for a while, and then after a while, parang hindi na rin siya interested, ganon. So, parang hindi, nahihirapan siya to meet someone na nasusustain yung ganoong interest and connection with. So, siguro, we have to manage our expectations na, yun nga, dahil mixed bag talaga ang mga dating app and iba-iba ng reasons, right, for being on dating app. So, yun, we really cannot expect to make a lot of like really great or sustainable connections to dating app. So parang use with caution, ganun lang siguro.
Yeah.
Kasi you don't know the people you'll run into. And I actually made a research last term. I made a research about mental health and social media, which you talked about a while ago po, Miss Bea. And everything you said was in my research paper. And it's up to how the person uses social media talaga. Because, for example, if an LGBTQ member is on social media and then they see a really happy LGBT couple, they can either take it
Mm.
like, oh, why am I like that? Why am I not like that? Why is my family not accepting this? How come I can't be that loud about my own
Yeah,
identity? But on
I
the
am
other
very
hand, you can
familiar with that
also
feeling.
but on the other hand, they can also like see it as an inspiration, like, oh, I want to be like that one day. And it can be really
Mm-hmm.
helpful to people then. So it really depends on
Yeah,
how you use social media. And I think that it's
it's
best
a
na
yeah.
lang that you just unfollow all of the things that make you feel down and just,
Mm-hmm.
go with the things that make you feel happy. So that's
Yeah,
at
it's
least.
a very it's a very double edged sword kasi. Like social media. Wait, naririnig ba ako? Oh my god.
Yes, yes.
Okay, sorry. Kasi like the mic thing is not going up on my screen, so I wasn't being heard. But yeah, it's a very double-edged sword social media. And actually not just like even including dating apps. Kasi like what I've noticed, like again, going back to the thing about like not making as much meaningful connection like with regards to dating apps. Kasi I'm not gonna say how I know because technically I'm not allowed to use any dating apps because I'm still 17. But
Guilty.
I'm just gonna I'm just gonna say that through a friend, from what I have observed through my friends, that dating apps kasi like what dating apps do is like it makes like interpersonal connection very transactional. Like do you
Mm.
oh like do you swipe right, swipe left, do you match, blah blah blah. It's there's all like these parameters that must happen first before you just before you get to talk. It's not like a very like genuine like connection that is like oh you just suddenly meet or like a friend introduces the both of you or because of that parameter nga na okay you're in the context of a dating app and you match. There's already that notion na okay this has to be going somewhere and that's like yung that notion that you have in your head like before you even get to know the person, it can really affect how you end up being, like how you end up like connecting like on a personal level. That's
Oh
just like again
yeah.
one of my observations.
Very specific observations.
Mhm. Oh wait,
But
wait like something to
yeah.
add then like even like focusing in more about like the LGBTQ like of course there's like specific apps for like gay and like actually wait I think there's also apps for like less like women to women like dating apps, but I'm not sure if there's like any prominent ones in the Philippines. But yeah, especially but like gay men have a lot. And like even then because like of course there's this whole notion about gay men being more sexual and being more, charged that way. So like in especially in like gay dating apps, it's more like focused on like the physical thing na okay, do you have a picture, do you have this, do you have that, are you do you fit into this notion of being like the being conventionally attractive. And that's gonna feel like in if you're not that, if you're not into like this, if you don't fit into this box of like hot people that only hot people want to meet with, then that's gonna be like that's just gonna feed more into your insecurity, and it can really affect like that deterioration on your mental health. Like again, just one of my observations.
I actually have something to say about this because you know how there are some people looking on dating apps for support, right? For people to talk to. And the thing is that you said nga with dating apps, it's really tricky because there's like a criteria or standard that somebody looks in another person. So imagine if you eliminate that person because they don't fit your criteria, but then they can actually be a really friendly or good person and a really good support,
Mhm.
but you just skip them because they don't fit the criteria. And I think that's not good, especially if your main goal is to look for somebody to, lean on or talk to. That's all I have to say.
That's true
Mm.
kasi parang siguro parang on one hand, maybe some people might say na ganun din naman sa real life, 'di ba? You make choices about who you will try to pursue or who you will continue to spend time with, and there are people that you will parang move away from. Kaya lang kasi, 'di ba, on dating apps, you make those decisions very rapidly based on very few cues or parang very little information. And a lot of the information we use is parang it boils down to how someone looks. And of course, di ba parang, yeah, normal naman for us to seek out parang physically attractive people to talk to. Um, Kaya lang, yun nga, merong mga na-create na parang may mga but yeah,
Yeah.
I was going parang in real life kasi or in nakakainis yung in real life. Yung in physical case, yung face to face. So parang sometimes even people who you think you're not attracted to, parang sometimes kapag nagka-opportunity ka na you get to spend a little more time with them, you get to see how they are in different situations, parang you will see sides of them that attractive pala to sa akin. Pero when you're on dating apps, wala eh. You don't get
Mm-hmm.
to see different sides of people. So parang medyo nalilimit yung people who we connect with based on parang very superficial.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Pwede rin siyang maka-affect negatively sa, sabi nga kanina, yung, it can also affect the way we think of ourselves. Parang we will start to compare ourselves with, ano nga was I gonna say? Parang it can heighten our tendency to, yung merong tinatawag yung sa psychology na self-objectification. So yung,
Mm.
di ba, normally we think about objectification as something that other people, parang, ino-objectify ako nitong tao na to kasi parang ang tingin niya sa akin, yun nga, parang physical body lang, hindi niya kino-consider na person ako with feelings and wants and desires and thoughts, ganyan. But sometimes, if we are constantly exposed to parang laging ganoon yung interactions natin, na ganun yung feeling natin, ganun tayo ine-evaluate ng ibang tao, we tend to also start to objectify ourselves. Na we think of ourselves constantly in terms of physical body parts, physical appearance. And while it's not wrong to care about how you look, kapag nagiging parang yun na lang or yun na yung pinaka-importante na thing that we care about with ourselves, it can be detrimental to our mental health. And actually, isa din yun sa findings about LGBT mental health, especially among gay men. Kasi nga, parang nag-rise kasi in gay male culture. Yung certain very idealized na standards of how gay men should
Yeah.
look. Di ba? Parang stereotypes na parang may stereotypes
The
na all gay
the mask.
men, yeah, oo, na
Mm.
are gym goers, na magaling magdamit, na perfect yung hair.
Mm-hmm.
And yung ganoong stereotypes, minsan nagiging self-imposed standards sana for some gay men, especially youth. Parang they start to feel na they have to live up to their standards, those standards, or else. Parang maliit na lang nga yung LGBT community na posibleng tumanggap sa'yo. Tapos, you feel pa na within that community, merong ganitong very high standards that are expected of you. So, parang it can be, it can be having effect on mental health, especially for young gay men. So, it's for then for us to kind of to broaden yung ideas natin what LGBTQ people look like, especially gay men, na they're not
Hmm.
all like super muscular, they're not all perfectly dressed. Um, Yun nga, some of them prefer to spend their free time at a coffee shop or at a bookstore, um, or reading comic books instead of going to the gym, and that's okay. Yun, so sana maging mas diverse din, di ba, yung uh, ideas na representation of, of how gay men look. Kasi kahit yung positive stereotype, kapag nagiging masyadong exaggerated.
I think we can move on to the next topic already because Miss Bea said a lot of good points already with
Yeah.
it. Yes.
But yeah, yun nga. Like regarding the like yung the notion of, like positive stereotypes, like yun nga, like the gym rat jock, perfectly well dressed gay, like it can be harmful. Like any stereotype can be harmful because it either reinforces something that's, very negative, kapag negative yung stereotype, or reinforcing like a positive image that, like, the expectations for those kind of people get super high, or even for those, like, for example, yun nga, being gay myself, like identifying as gay myself, like I definitely feel the pressure to be this like perfectly sculpted ivory man, like a Greek sculpture. But kasi nga that's the picture that's being pushed on me. Kasi that's the stereotype that's being perpetuated. But then even like if that's, maybe it can inspire me to be like, do healthier, like develop healthier habits, be more fit. That notion can still be, be toxic in a way na, yun nga, it, to the point, oh my god, may lamok. To the point na it's harmful na I suddenly don't pay attention to, like, instead of, eating healthier, I just, don't eat at all, or I overwork my body every single day to try to lose as much weight as possible as fast as I can, because, there's already people my age who are also part of this community that, that are like already better looking than me, or already, at a certain point in their, in their careers or stuff. Just like comparing yourself, even like, at first it can be like, inspiration. It can be a very toxic thing if it goes too far nga. Wala lang, that's again another point. Yeah, so okay, now we have to move on to like the Q&A portion. I think Bernice, you said there was like some questions that were
Oh
brought
yeah.
up. I
We
think
got
you'll
some
again.
questions from
Yeah,
our social media. And someone asked if what to do if your household is strict and you want to come out, like to your
Mm,
family during quarantine.
uh, that's a good question. And for many people, it's a very real question. So one of the things that or some of the things I can suggest are una to consider kung um, is it an option to come out to certain people in the family muna. So hindi naman kailangan, coming out does not have to be parang one big, parang all or none, di ba? It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be na one moment you're in the closet, the next you're parang nagka-press conference ka at alam ng buong barangay that you are LGBT. You can be selective, that's perfectly fine. If there are people in your family who you think would be more supportive, who you, based on what you've seen, on what you hear them say, it's perfectly fine to start by coming out to those people because one of the things that I would encourage for many people who are who are starting to come out. Kasi I would suggest that we think of coming out as a process. rather than parang one step. It's a
Mm-hmm.
process. For some people, coming out is something that
Yeah.
they'll do many times over their life.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Like there's this saying na ano, like you never come out once. You always have to come out every time you meet new people because yun nga, there's this predetermined notion na like you're always, just straight. If like that's what people assume. Like you're straight, you're cis,
mm,
and yeah, that's what you are. So you always have to come out. Like non-cis het people always have to come out. It's like a constant, never-ending process that you'll have to do probably until the day that you die. So yeah.
siguro
Oh no.
related to that, yeah, so parang one of the things that's really important is for anyone who is starting to come out, starting the process of coming out. It really helps if you have parang a supportive base to return to na parang it could be family, it doesn't have to be. So try to establish muna yung supportive base na yun. Maybe that's your one friend or one cousin. Maybe it's even an online community of people you've never met in person, pero that you feel safe with. But I think the crucial thing here is na um, realistically, it might be necessary to anticipate the outcome na posibleng hindi lahat ng family members mo maging accepting yung response. And even though, of course, we don't want that to be the case. Pero if it turns out that way, kahit initially, hopefully at some point they will come around, they will start to change their minds. But while they're still in that parang zone of unacceptance, it helps if yung person who is coming out, meron siyang nababalik-balikan na source of support na unquestioning, unconditional yung acceptance, so that you do not feel as if everyone around. So, parang ang suggestion ko is establish that safe space, that supportive network. It doesn't have to be a huge network, but yan, kahit isang tao, basta yung important is there's someone in your life who you know will validate you and will accept you, regardless of how your family responds.
That's a really good answer, Miss. And
Mm-hmm.
we actually have a lot of more questions. I hope that we have the time for this. um, but would you like to read the second question, Cole?
Okay. Okay, so we have another question. Okay. How do you ease into your sexuality when your parents have always been disapproving of the LGBTQ plus community? Ooh. Like, okay, small tidbit, like, from me lang din. Like, mm, uh, like, it's definitely a hard thing, especially, like, from somebody, like, personally, like, sa akin lang, I wouldn't risk trying to come out, especially if you're somebody who, you're financially dependent on them. Like, kasi, actually with anybody, even for me, like, even if I had, when I came out, I have, like, semi accepting parents. Like, even then, there's still always this, like, small part in the back of my brain that tells me, like, what if they kick you out, what if they cut you off, what if they disown you. And, like, that there's always gonna be that niggling doubt in the back of your brain, like, being part of the community, because that's the narrative that's always been the prominent one. Like, homeless, like, LGBTQ people kicked out of their own homes, especially here in the Philippines. Like, not to scare you, kasi, like, but it's just, but, like, with the presumption that they're already disapproving. Like, again, like, it's just my personal, like, opinion na you probably shouldn't risk it unless you know that you can stand on your own.
Yeah, actually,
La-
because we had a lot of previous guests that are our age, and they also wanted to come out to their parents. But even if, like, we had this one guest that wanted to come out to his parents, even if his parents are really, loving to him. He was still scared because there's still this notion that he would be disowned when it would happen. So, what would you say about that, Miss?
Okay. So, of course, in an ideal world, I wish I could say na, okay lang yan. Parang if you come out, they will still love you and accept you. But it's also a very real and valid fear. Na sometimes we worry na, what if they're not? What if they don't accept this part of who we are? So, napaka-unfortunate niya. Pero ayoko kasing hindi ko gusto yung response na, hindi, wag kang matakot, okay lang yan. Kasi, yun nga, knowing the way our society is, meron naman talagang tip. So, suggest maybe is to sort of test the waters. Pwede namang, you can start by maybe casually talking about a friend of yours who is gay or a celebrity that you follow who is LGBT and see how they react. So pwedeng parang medyo start gradually or with subtle cues and see how they react. Hindi naman sa parang syempre again in an ideal world, I wish that I could say na parang just blurt it out, diba? Just tell them how you feel. But sometimes it helps when, especially for parents who have certain views na maybe are not so accepting or maybe kulang sila ng information about LGBT people. Sometimes it helps if they start to get an inkling na this my child might be LGBT. Because hopefully they will start to, before you like actually come out, hopefully they will already start to entertain that possibility. Maybe they will start to seek out information. Especially, hello, ayun. Parang one of the things that I recently experienced na natouch talaga ako was kasi yung LGBT psychology special interest group. We recently organized an online webinar on parenting LGBT youth. And then I was surprised kasi, so I was very excited for this webinar kasi matagal na namin gustong magkaroon ng parang ganoong event. And then to my surprise, merong another member of the PET, the Psychological Association of the Philippines, na hindi siya kasama ng special interest group namin. She is considered kind of a leader in a different field. Nag-message siya sa akin. Sabi niya, this was before the webinar, sabi niya, meron sana akong i-consult sa'yo. Recently kasi nag-come out yung anak daw niya nag-come out as trans. And parang yung person na to, yung psychologist who was talking to me, parang sabi niya, I feel kind of lost. I don't know how to, or parang I don't know what the next steps are. I don't know how to support my child, ganyan. So, yun, sinuggest ko sa kanya na mag-attend ng webinar, and then I shared with her some information na, kahit yung links lang na pwede niyang i-start tingnan. Tapos, nag-contact siya ulit sa akin after the webinar. Sabi niya, I feel so much better now. Parang, I feel more sure about what I can do to support my child. And meron dun kasi sa webinar namin, one of the things I really liked was that we were able to invite a developmental psychologist. So parang expert speaker siya. And then, meron din kaming speaker na heterosexual mom siya na may anak siya na gay. Tapos, meron din kaming speaker na trans na youth who talked about having supportive parents. So parang from different sides. So, yung person who was talking to me, yung colleague ko, parang sabi niya na-realize ko na marami palang ways na I can support my child, and parang hindi na ganoon ka-alien para sa kanya yung territory ko. So, I think it might be helpful. I think one of the things kasi that can be difficult for parents when their kids come out, if it's totally unexpected, parang yun, it might feel like something they don't have a handle on. They don't know what to say, what to do. So parang if they start to get an idea, hopefully they can start to seek out information. Para kapag mas explicitly mag-come out ka na, medyo may handle na sila on what to say or what to do, instead of parang instead of if it comes as a shock to them.
Yes, actually, you brought up a good point when you helped me realize that not all the time that unaccepting parents can, like, their mindsets can't be changed, because sometimes you just need to educate them, because when they were younger or as they were growing up, information about the LGBTQ community wasn't as accessible, and they might not know much about it. So, of course, as a reaction, they might just disagree, because, of course, they don't know about the topic. They'll think that it's not really. Sometimes they won't think that it's valid because they don't know much about it nga. And I think that it's a really good idea nga to let your parents know more about the community slowly, as you ease them into maybe even coming out to them, so that they'll understand you and where you're coming from.
Yeah, I also want to add to that na what you said about parang yung initial, pwedeng mag-change over time yung reaction ng parents mo and yung level ng acceptance nila towards you. That's really true. That has been true for the experience of many LGBT people. Of course, ideally, I wish na from the start, accepting na agad sila. Pero parang siguro yung point lang ay, if their initial reaction is not so accepting, pwedeng posible pa namang magbago yon. Our beliefs, our attitudes can be flexible, can change. Ano pa ba yung I also want to mention na one of the things about when LGBTQs come out to their parents, nagkakaroon din ng, in some ways, the parents also find that they have to come out also to other people. Na parang, especially if their child, parang they find themselves in a position where sometimes they have to explain to other people, especially, kunyari, let's say, so nag-out na si anak. Tapos, let's say, maybe naging mas vocal na sa, like, on social media. Tapos, nakita ng ibang relatives. So, sometimes they will do things like they'll ask the parents, parang, ano ba yung mga pinupost ni ganyan? Bakit ganon? And so, parents sometimes find themselves in a position where they now have to come out as the parents of an LGBT child. So, parang nalolost sila. And sometimes, actually, ang kinikwento nga sa akin ng yung mga colleagues ko who do more family therapy, ang kinikwento nila sa akin, when they have clients who are LGBT youth na nagka-come out, mas madalas daw ang may need for therapy and for counseling ay yung parents. Because not because it's a traumatic event for them na nag-come out yung anak nila, but because they need to process the experience. So when a child comes out as LGBTQ, parang to a certain extent, nagbabago rin yung tingin ng parents sa sarili nila na, oh, I am now the parent of an LGBTQ youth. And to many of them, they don't know what that means. They don't know what that should look like or can look like. So some of them need parang a safe space to process that. And sometimes therapy can be that safe. So, yun, parang there is that possibility for parents and other family members to grow to become more accepting. And I always hope naman na that is the case. Siguro yung isa ko lang na sasabihin na I wish I didn't have to say this, but if you feel that there is a risk of something na that could be truly yung parang very harmful to your survival, like let's say merong indicators na posibleng maging violent or abusive yung parents or anyone in the household if you come out, or yung merong real risk sa yung parang sa assessment mo meron talagang risk na you might be disowned, you might be turned, di ba, parang papaalisin ka sa sarili mong home. If you think na merong real risk that will happen, it might be more important right now to guarantee your safety first. And pwede naman na kapag nasa space ka na mas safe, like let's say, na-mention kanina na maybe when you're no longer living in their household or parang sure ka na whatever happens, you can take care of yourself, you can take care of your physical safety. Pwede naman na that's when you come out. So, not in all cases na kailangan mong hintayin yung time na yun. But if you feel na there could be a risk to your safety, to your health, kung mag-come out ka, kung sa tingin mong merong risk of yung very extreme na rejecting responses to the point of abuse or being turned out of your home. That's when I would say na parang baka kailangan i-postpone yung coming out. Hindi naman ika-cancel. I-postpone na.
Yeah.
It depends on the parents talaga.
Yeah, it's like kasi it's again it's a very prominent thing that happens here in the Philippines. Because again, Philippines is a very religious Christian Catholic country. Yeah, that's why the acceptance rate here it's still like relatively low, at least. But yeah, again, it just really think about what could happen before you try to come out. Okay, now moving on to our next question. We have, okay, I think Burns, do you want to take this? Or okay.
Sure.
Say.
So here's the next question. What will you do if the people around you keep misgendering you and you're too shy to tell them off?
Okay. So yung again, I want to say na yung a lot of people who are not trans, a lot of people who are cisgender, sometimes don't understand how traumatic misgendering can be. Honestly, ako mismo, parang even though I've considered myself an ally to trans people for a long time, hindi ko na-realize until relatively recently kasi so when I used to teach an LGBT psychology class, my face-to-face classes pa. And one of the sessions I invited a group of guests na transgender people, trans men and trans women, to visit my class and share about their personal experiences. Tapos yung iba, kinikwento nila, lalo na yung students, transgender students, kinikwento nila na sobrang difficult for them yung moment in class na yung mag-roll call yung teacher at the start of class. Kasi tatawagin sila by their dead name, the name that they were given at birth. That don't identify with, it doesn't match their gender identity. Sobrang nakaka-anxiety daw talaga yun. parang nightmare daw siya talaga. To the point that some will just not go to class because it really makes them feel so bad. And even outside of school, kinikwento rin ng mga yung ibang trans women who were able to share to my class, yung kinikwento nila ay, even when you're working, you have to worry about things like, di ba parang if your office mates will call you Mr. or Miss, if you're parang, di ba, in some offices kasi, di ba, yung ilalagay nila yung pangalan mo and yung title mo doon sa harap ng office mo, parang ganon.
Yeah,
So sometimes,
yeah.
sometimes source yun ng great anxiety na, for a lot of cisgender people, we take it for granted na something, di ba, it's a moment of pride na, uy, naka-display yung pangalan mo. But for trans people, it can be a moment of, parang anxiety, parang lalo kang nare-remind na hindi fully, di ba, hindi fully recognized yung gender identity mo. So yeah, this can induce anxiety for transgender people. Yung being misgendered. Unfortunately, sa Pilipinas, hindi pa ganoon ka-common yung sa culture natin, yung pag-recognize na people's pronouns and people's yung address that they want to be called, parang is it Mr., is it Miss, is it Mick, hindi pa ganoon ka-common sa atin na tanungin, di ba?
Yeah.
And it's more common for people to assume na pag nakita, parang because of how you look or because of what your parang the name on your legal document says, I can assume that your gender is this and I can assume that your pronouns are this. So difficult talaga siya. If you feel shy to correct people, it might help to find an ally, to find someone on your side. Kasi minsan, mas madali for allies, maybe cisgender people, to take up that battle on your behalf. Not because they're braver, but because they have less to lose. And sadly, the weird thing about yung mga ganitong issues na may kinalaman sa inequality, the weird thing is that people tend to listen more to allies who are not really members of that group. Kasi parang meron tayong misguided siya, pero parang yun yung nakikitang finding sa research na, kunyari, cisgender people are more likely to listen to fellow cisgender people who take a stand about trans rights. Then they will listen to an actual transgender person. Parang mali, di ba? Pero parang gano'n siya, gano'n yung lumalabas sa research. Similar sa yung LGBT rights in general. So when straight allies speak up for LGBT rights, LGBT mental health, parang binuview yon ng other straight people as for some reason more credible, more parang convincing compared to when it's LGBT people talking about it. Kasi merong conception na, special right, nagreklamo lang yan. So one suggestion I could make is to find an who can speak up and para help you negotiate yung pag-correct ng pronouns, pag-correct ng name na ginagamit when people are talking to you. And sometimes, it doesn't have to be a cisgender person. Sometimes if you have friends who are LGBT or who are trans na who are already comfortable doing that, pwede rin naman na sila yung who will help you do that, especially at the start. It's kind of similar to going to the bathroom, going to public restrooms. For me, I find it parang one of the practical ways that I can show support to my trans women friends is to accompany them if they need to go to the bathroom in a public space, like at a mall, at a restaurant, tapos gendered yung restroom. Sometimes I offer to accompany them because I know that it can help them feel safer. Kesa kung pupunta sila mag-isa sa women's bathroom, knowing na other people might kind of, might react negatively. So parang ganon. Hindi naman sa gamitin, parang yung sinasabi ko, it comes across as gamitin mo yung cisgender friends mo. Hindi naman ganon. Pero parang, rely on them for support, to help you face those difficult situations, awkward situations. Posibleng sila yung magiging mas comfortable gawin yun. And maybe over magiging mas komportable ka rin na ikaw na yung mag-assert nung gender identity mo, nung pronoun mo.
Ma'am, Miss, I actually have a genuine question about what you talked about with trans women and trans men going to gendered restrooms, because there have been a lot of arguments saying that if a trans woman goes into the girls' restroom and it's accepted, some perverts might take advantage of it and just say that they're trans and then go to the women's restroom. How do you counter that po?
I think the easiest way, well, hindi ko alam kung easiest, pero parang, to me, the argument that makes most sense is that if you look at the statistics, doon sa mga lugar, so meron kasing mga places where naging mas common na yung gender-neutral restrooms, and naging mas common na rin for trans women to use women's restrooms, for trans men to use men's restrooms. Kapag tinignan natin yung statistics ng assault, ng harassment in those places, parang wala namang nakikitang rise in those kinds of incidents. Parang ang daming tao na sinasabing, ay, nakakatakot, baka ganito yung mangyari. Pero wala namang documented instances na nangyayari doon. So parang it seems to be more of parang it's a fear that we are constructing in order to deny access to people. Parang meron tayong fear na risk na hindi pa naman natin nakikita na real siya na risk compared to the real risk that transgender people already face. Kasi yung the problem here, one of the problems is that for trans people, like let's say trans women, if trans women go to the men's room, there is truly a very real risk that they will be harassed, that they will be assaulted. It's a real risk. Parang the numbers are very clear about that. Even so, but yung reverse then, if trans men use the women's room, the women's restroom, kasi nga sasabihin ng mga tao, hindi ka tulad ng lalaki, doon ka sa pwede rin silang maka-face ng rejection, verbal assault, harassment. So, parang to me, yung dating ay, ini-ignore natin yung existing na real risks to real people, to trans people, that they face, that they experience when we deny them access to the restrooms that match their gender identity. Meron talaga silang na-face na real risk of harm. Pero parang ang sinasabi natin is, mas importante yung tinatatakutan kong risk na wala pa naman tayong nakikita ng ganong incidents, pero in case mangyari siya, parang sinasabi natin na mas importante yun. So to me, that seems unfair. And it seems to me na we should be able to propose, to find solutions that will safeguard the safety of transgender people. I think many people are not aware na yun nga, transgender people are really at the highest risk of experiencing violence, experiencing harassment, and even physical health problems. Dahil nga dito sa yung access to restrooms is really an issue for trans people when they're out in public. So a lot of trans people, um, kapag nasa labas sila, like they're at work, they're at the mall, whatever, they're watching a movie, and they feel the need to use the bathroom. Sometimes, hihintayin nila hanggang makauwi sila, kahit na ilang oras pa yon. Kasi yung bathroom sa bahay, yun lang place where they feel safe to rest. And you can imagine that can have consequences on your health. Diba? Kung
Yeah.
titigilin. Meron din akong mga kakilala na kinikwento sa akin na sabi nung ibang trans women na friends ko, nag-work sila sa isang company na supposedly parang naman, inclusive naman. Pero sabi nila, yung naging experience nila is when they tried to use the women's restroom sa office nila, inaway daw sila ng mga office mates nila na cisgender women.
Oh God.
And dahil hindi din sila komportable gamitin yung men's room, so ang nangyayari, when they need to use the bathroom, they leave their office. So nasa taas sila ng isang mataas na building, bababa sila, lalabas sila ng office na yun, maglalakad sila maybe 3 blocks to the nearest mall.
No.
But the nearest mall is the only place where they can use the restroom.
Oh.
And so imagine, diba? parang ilang oras yung na-spend mo na take up mo na. Yung for something as simple as going to the bathroom. Instead of matapos mo na siya agad, then you can go back to what you're doing. Parang, di ba, it's so impractical, it's so unhealthy, na some people have to resort to doing these things. And so, parang dehumanizing. Parang sinasabi natin, less important yung na makagamit ng food. So, I think na for those of us who feel afraid na baka may risk na merong pervert who will take advantage of that, siguro we also have to ask ourselves na, are we comfortable na ang magiging solution natin doon is to keep exposing trans people to the risks that they already face? Or can we think of better solutions na para hindi sila maging vulnerable sa ganun? Or yun yung kailangan.
Okay, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah, like again, like I've said it before and I'll say it again. Like the being trans, like without doubt, is being like harder than like being trans. The experience of being trans, it's way harder than being gay or being like any other identity there is in the LGBT. Like again, they have it the hardest because like this notion of having to, because like at least not saying that they should, but like at least like identities like lesbians, gay people, like bi people, at least they can hide. But but being trans, like a huge part of your identity is presenting like your identity, because that's one of the main things, because like changing like what you look like on the outside to match how you feel like on the inside. But with that there comes the consequences of being constantly under the judge of the public eye, which can really like just make your life so much harder than any of us could ever imagine. Like especially in this, if I just like to mention like this one documentary. It was recently released on Netflix. It's called Disclosure, and it really details. Yeah, it's a really good documentary. It really details like the reality of the trans experience, and it's really insightful. Like it's just something to share lang. But yeah. Oh my wait. Wait, oh my god, it's been almost 2 hours. Oh my god.
Oh yeah.
Oh
But
wait.
we actually we feel like
Oh
we haven't been able to ask you about your personal life and how you got to become the coordinator of
Yeah.
the association.
So I
Okay.
guess I guess it's like as a last question, but like, how did you come about, like,
With
is it like
becoming like an
especially in,
ally
yeah,
and becoming
and
the
especially
coordinator of the,
specializing in, yeah,
sorry.
like the special yeah, the special interest LGBT group, like specified group in
Right.
psychology. Because actually, like, when I first found out, like, I didn't know like those kinds of like specialties existed, and I was like really excited when I found out that those kinds of things, were actually there. And it's kind of nice to know that, there are people who care about the community enough to, like, give us like and to shed like academic light, I guess, on our identities, like especially our psychology. So
Mm.
yeah, I guess like
Yeah,
how,
thank you for asking.
yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I think my mic, my AirPods are kind of dying, so I think I might need to switch down to a different set of of earphones. So I'll take
Also,
Okay.
1 minute to switch. Sorry.
Okay, okay. Hmm. Alyssa, is everything okay pa? Like, relatively speaking, about the recording? Wala pa rin namang issues? Ah, yay! Nice. Okay. Oh my God, sana ma-render siya ng maayos, hindi siya makurap. Oh my God, kinakabahan ako.
yeah, because oh my god, this whole podcast is so informative to me.
Yeah. It's
It's
one of
so,
like our more condensed, like really educational podcasts,
yeah, it's
actually.
like, oh, should I be paying for this?
Oh, by the way, who will edit? Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm sorry in advance because I know what it's like to edit 2 hour long clips of audio. uh,
Hello. Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I
Yes, no.
can't though.
Oh, it's a little bit quiet though. But I can
Oh,
hear you naman clearly. I can hear you naman po.
okay. Sige. Um, I'll try holding the mic closer to my mouth. Um, so siguro short answer to that question na lang. Um, yeah, many people often ask how I came to be an LGBT psychologist, or parang someone in the LGBT psychology special interest group. Especially when they find out na straight ally pala ako, hindi pala ako LGBT personally. Um, so I guess one of the parang starting points for me was even a long time, parang even in my high school years, college years, for some reason I've always had many friends who were LGBT. Um, and for many of my close friends talaga since yung times na yun, high school, college, parang naging formative experience for us in our friendships, in the course of our friendships, was yung coming out nila, um, yung struggles with things like relationships, dealing with families. Um, for some, meron akong friends na nag-come out as trans eventually and nag-transition. So parang being able to sort of witness closely yung transitioning process. I think because that was something I experienced when I was younger, and it was something that involved people who I cared about very deeply, some of my best friends. Parang it became something that I was really invested in. Na even if it's not my personal experience, parang I could really see na there's really a struggle. There are really struggles there. But there are also sources of joy and happiness, di ba? And positive experiences. So parang it became something that mattered to me. Na parang it's something that I wanted to work on, to do research about. And when I started to study psych in college, yung iba kong research papers were on that topic as well, about LGBT friendships of LGBT people, and things like that, prejudice against LGBT people. So yun, and then I was lucky enough na in college, one of my professors na naging parang mentor ko was also someone who was interested in pursuing LGBT psychology, um, to the point na naging parang we started to regularly work on research together on LGBT topics and present these things, share these our findings with other people. Na-realize namin na parang yung field pala ng psychology, yung organization, yung Psychological Association of the Philippines, it is it's a space that we can use to promote LGBT health and LGBT rights and LGBT well-being. So when the LGBT Psychology Special Interest Group was formed, yung good friend ko na yon na parang mentor ko and frequent collaborator in research, was the original chairperson or original coordinator of the group. And I was the co-coordinator. So parang medyo mas behind the scenes ako. Parang I was helping to organize the group and organize the activities. Pero hindi naman ako yung lead talaga. And eventually, when our first coordinator stepped down because he is currently pursuing his PhD in the UK, so of course, we're very proud of him for that. We're very supportive of that. So syempre nagkaroon ng search for sino na yung magiging new coordinator or new chairperson. And sabi nila, well, Bea, ikaw yung naging co-coordinator for ilang years. So baka ikaw na yung dapat maging, and yun nga, sinasabi nila na parang I've had the opportunity to study LGBT topics in parang training sessions outside the country. I've been fortunate enough to be able to share some of my research as well, both locally and internationally. So parang people in the group felt na ready naman daw ako to be the coordinator of the LGBT Special Interest Group. And it's something that I felt very, very parang grateful for to be given that trust. But also, it's something that I constantly parang ask myself about, and I even ask other people about in the group. Kasi parang, minsan, tinatanong ko yung sarili ko, okay lang ba talaga yon na yung head ng LGBT Special Interest Group ay hindi LGBT? Diba? If there were, hello?
Ma'am, Miss, I actually relate kasi I'm one of the hosts sa LGBTQ podcast, diba? But I'm not a part of the community. Okay, yun lang. You can continue po.
Oo. That it's good. It's good to know na parang talagang siya, real experience. And I think that maybe you will agree with me na parang you feel na you have to be very careful kasi yun nga, parang you are sort of representing or or fighting for or advocating for a group that you yourself are not part of. So syempre ayokong ma-question or ayokong maging mali yung steps that I take. Na what if um, yung ideas ko about how to use psychology to promote LGBT well-being, LGBT mental health, baka mali pala. Baka hindi ko pala naiintindihan kung ano talaga yung need. So, to me, it's very important na um, even though I'm the head or the coordinator, I try to really consult and listen to the members of the group, many of whom, not all, but many of whom are LGBT people themselves, and who also specialize in LGBT psychology. So parang kung ano sa tingin, ano yung suggestions nila na magandang maging activities ng group, ano yung mga training na kailangan. So yung things like that, it's very important to me na hindi ko binibase lang sa sarili kong ideas, yung ano ba yung dapat na gagawin. But I try to listen to what the different members of the group have to say. And parang when it comes to yung visibility ng group, yung pag-represent ng special interest group sa iba-ibang event, I try to make sure na hindi lang ako lagi yung may visibility. Like for example, if there are media outlets requesting na mag-interview na to talk about LGBT issues.
Opo.
Yeah, I think it's important to try to get someone in the group who is actually LGBT, kung komportable sila. Kasi maganda rin na makita ng public na, merong mga psychologists who are LGBT, merong mga, di ba, parang, and they are
highly credible people also.
Yes, they are credible people, exactly. So yun, parang, ano ba? So for me, it's an important part of my work. It's an advocacy that I care about. But it's also something that I feel that I have to be very careful and very thoughtful about yung how to do this work.
That's true. That's a really inspiring story, Miss Bea. I admire how you decided to take initiative, especially with a topic as sensitive and not as accepted in the Philippines, like the LGBTQ community. And
especially in the Philippines.
And also how you connected to psychology then. This has been a really informative and interesting discussion, but it's time to conclude our episode, sadly, due to time constraints.
Yeah. Oh my
So
God.
sad.
We've been filming for like almost over 2 hours. But yes, okay.
But it's a really amazing discussion.
It's
I
a
really
really
feel like,
invigorating discussion. Yeah.
I feel like I should pay for this because I'm learning so much. But yeah.
Okay. So first of all, we would like to thank you, Ms. Bea, for being here with us today and providing really good insights on the mental health and the LGBTQ community. We are again, we are so fortunate to have a professional like you here today. Oh my, it's still just I cannot stress enough how fortunate and how honored I am to actually be able to talk to somebody like with your with your
With your
I'm just
background
really
po.
I'm just really fangirling like a
Yeah,
lot.
since the start of the podcast, Cole has been fangirling.
Yeah.
Thank you also. I really appreciate yung opportunity na to, especially because we don't always get the chance to reach out to younger audiences. So yeah, it's also great to be able to share what we know, yung experiences namin. Yeah, so hopefully we can continue to reach out to more people.
Thank you, Miss. Oh my God.
Thank you.
All right.
We would also like to thank all of our listeners for making it this far into the podcast. We really appreciate your initiative to learn more about these topics.
And once again, Thank you for tuning in to this very special episode of the Alphabet Zoo podcast in collaboration with Project KaSaMa. We are your hosts, Cole Sapiok and Bernice Ko, and we're hoping you'll see more of us and our advocacy soon.